Yeah. Good evening. I guess I wore everybody out this morning. No, go sit down, please. Nobody came back. No, you did. No, you did. No, I wore, but we had so much excitement, we wore them out. No,
That's the kind of excitement we need. I mean, that's good.
just trying to make sure he's not going to destroy anything. He is the doorman.
He's the doorman. Somebody lean in.
He's
a wrestler.
He's a good doorman. What a morning. It was a good morning, right? So grateful for that. And we are going to have a special speaker this afternoon. John Clements. And sure appreciate his willingness to teach, willingness to do whatever I ask him to. He does a great job of being a blessing to me and friendship to me and support to me and to you too. He's like that with really everybody. So come on up, Brother John, and let's see what the Lord has for us this afternoon. Thank you for being so willing to step up.
Well, I'm back up here again. It's been a couple months. Still about as nervous as always, am. Yeah. Today we'll be in John chapter 7 and 8. We'll be starting off in 8. If I can get there. I'm using my grandpa's old Bible. My Miss Judy, she gave it to me before she passed, so it's kind of been a generational thing. So I like it because it's got the super big print. We'll be starting off in John chapter 8 today. Brother Mike got a hold of me last weekend. He asked me if I'd be willing to do some preaching this afternoon. So I got to really thinking really hard. And something that set on my heart pretty big was he is without sin may cast the first stone. You know, it's really easy to pass judgment without having discernment. You know what I mean? It's easy to look at others and point out their faults without looking inside and seeing your own faults first. And I had this whole idea of what that meant, and I got to talking to Brother Mike, and he kind of rearranged how that was working in my mind. So I'm grateful that I can come to him and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. How close am I? And he's able to get me on the right track. But we'll just kind of get started here. John chapter 8, verse 1. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. So this is right after the Feast of the Tabernacle. And so Jesus and the Pharisees have been having a little debate. The Pharisees have been trying to catch him in saying something he shouldn't. They're trying to incriminate Jesus and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Kind of wipe away his teachings and make him a false prophet. So they spent the whole night of the Feast of Tabernacles trying to get him to mess up. And Jesus, being Jesus, he can't. He knows far better than they what's going on. So in verse 3 it says, "And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken into adultery in the very act. Now Moses' law, in the law, commands us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou?" This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down with his finger, wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So, whatever they have to say about this, it's not on the forefront for Jesus. He stooped down and he's writing things out in the floor. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. So he stood up from his writing and said this prolific thing, and then right back to what he was doing. He took time enough to acknowledge him for what he had to say, and then went back to what he was doing. I wish I could do that at work all the time. Okay. But we kind of got to think about what the Pharisees were. These were people that they thought they knew it all. They dressed in the finest robes, and they walked around saying, "Thank you, God, that I'm not like this man here, this poor beggar." They puffed themselves up and made themselves look grand and as if they were a desirable person to be. And we do that. We all do that. It's human nature to want to lift yourself up and make yourself seem as if you're larger than life, that you're the tough guy, you're the fanciest dresser, that you have all the money in the wallet to do whatever you want. And so they don't want that image to be destroyed. No, nobody wants to see all of that smoke and mirrors and have somebody say, "Well, that's not you at all. I know how you really are." So they're stuck in this lifted up position where they think they know it all. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. So Jesus has called them out. They're so focused on this woman's sin, this whole group. They're so focused and zoned in on what she's done. And Jesus has said to the whole group, "Well, what about you? What have you done?" And every last one of them that was so gung-ho to point out this woman's faults, suddenly one by one they're leaving. They're going away because they're convicted. It's when you get called out on your wrongdoing, it sits in your heart. It always does. I mean, that's a good portion of your conscience, and you're being told you're in the wrong. Nobody likes to be in the wrong, so they leave. They drop their case because they don't want their things to be brought out into the light. And when Jesus had lifted himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man commended thee or condemned thee? So Jesus is saying, where'd everybody go? It's just you and me now. I love that. I really, really do. It is It is a really neat illustration because it drives the point home. He's called them out, and they understand he knows something about us that we don't want people to hear about. She said, "No, man, Lord." And Jesus said unto her, "Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more." So Jesus, who has all the authority to condemn somebody for anything, has just told this woman, "You're good. Go and don't sin anymore." I mean, he's giving her a pass. He's saying, "You're forgiven for anything that you might have done. Go and don't sin anymore." And Jesus is the only one with any authority other than God to judge anybody. And it when you're so fixated on somebody else's wrongdoing, that's not a position you should ever be in, where you're worried about what this guy's doing, what this gal's doing, because what are you doing? uh, we all sin. Everybody in this building is sin. Everybody will sin. That's human nature. And to try and call somebody out and pretend like this sin is worse than this sin, what they're doing is worse than what I'm doing. Sin is sin, plain and simple. There's no line about somewhat bad sin and terrible sin. Sin is sin is sin. So you have no authority at all to discern whether or not you're in the good because you only did this, and they're bad off because they did that. How could they possibly do that sin? All I did was this. Anybody ever ran a red light? I've done it. That's a sin when we really break it down. You're breaking the law. But is it worse than having a little a bump accident and taking off? It's still a sin. It's the same manner through in and throughout. So we really need to focus on not being judgmental on other people for what they do. If we're not going to take the time to look at ourselves and say, well, I've done this, who am I to say anything about that person? I spend a lot of time trying to keep from doing things like that, because I know that I'm in the wrong sometimes, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I do my best not to be boastful or prideful, but sometimes I am, and that's a sin. I'm not supposed to do that. I do sometimes. So I do my best not to judge somebody on their appearance, what they say and do. It's about having that discernment. Now, you're not supposed to go, and when those people are doing those things, you're not supposed to join in. That's discernment. That is a positive judgment. You're judging that is wrong, and I will not do that. But I'm going to let them know they shouldn't do that. It's sometimes we get into this area where we judge somebody on the clothes they might wear, or the ratty vehicle they drive, the job they work. And while there's some discernment and maybe there's a reason, it's everybody has their faults. You can't go calling somebody else out for their faults if you've got some of the same things going on. It's there's no need. Only God has the authority to tell you what you're doing wrong and to judge you on all that. Oh, I thought I had a whole lot more on my notes. And we can go back to chapter 7, verse 21-23. Now, this is during the Feast of Tabernacles. Jesus is preaching in this point. And they're asking him questions. They're trying to get him to slip up and say the wrong thing. And in verse 21 it says, Jesus answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and ye all marveled. Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers. And ye on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. If a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are ye angry at me because I have made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath day? So there he's calling them out for things that they have done on the Sabbath when their big complaint was the miracle he worked on a Sabbath day. So right there he's saying, you have done this on the Sabbath. Why would you call me out on a Sabbath for what I have done? And then 24, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. So he's saying, you need to have your affairs in order. You need to be judging on the righteous things and not on what it looks like. You need to have your heart in the right place. Correct? This verse sticks with me pretty good because I know several people that the way they are, the way they dress, the way they act, they're not the most desirable of appearances to have, but they're still good people. But most people outside looking in, they're quick to say, well, they're not good people. I know they are. I've seen the good things they do. I know where their heart's kind of at. And it's always bothered me that people can look at somebody else and see one of the things they've done and go, how dare they? How could they do that? How could they be that way? They're not having a righteous judgment there. They're going off their eyes, and they're not following their heart in the Lord. They're not putting a trust in the Lord to have that righteous judgment. They're just having their assumptions. You never know somebody's story to look at somebody and go, wow, and we ought to be looking inside. We need to be looking in here because every one of us has sinned. Every one of us has had something on us. And if we look deep enough, I'm sure there's something that you would feel terrible about. And the fact that you could look at somebody else and say, look at that guy, hurts me because I've seen it before. I've seen it several times. I'm not a big fan of that. So I wish this was more prolific and endearing. I'm not much of a public speaker. So I really hope and pray that you guys got something out of it. Brother Kelly, would you finish or lead us in a prayer, please?
Good Father, we thank you for the time we've had in your house today. Thank you for encouraging this morning, for baptism. honor them and be with all of us, Lord, and God in the world, this will. And Lord, just thank you for Jonathan for the message that he's brought this afternoon. Just pray that we can put it to heart, Lord, and just be mindful of others, Lord, and just watch over us now, be with the families, be with each and every one of us. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Oh.